Welcome to Healthy Longevity. I'm here today with Dr. Jessica Shepard, who's a board-certified OBGYN. She completed a residency in that field at Drexel University at Hahnemann Hospital in Philadelphia, and then spent 6 years as Director of Minimally Invasive Gynecology at the University of Illinois, and entered the field subsequently of functional medicine. Currently, she's the CEO and founder of her concierge medical practice, Sanctum Medical and Wellness, in Dallas. You've been honored multiple times as one of Dallas's best doctors, and you're seen regularly on ABC as the woman's health expert on Good Morning America, the Today Show, CNN, CBS. So congrats, you've done so much. I had the pleasure of meeting you online first and then in person, and was blown away when she monitored and moderated sessions at our Longevity Docs conference. Jessica, it's so great to have you here today.
So great to see you again. And I'm so glad that we had the opportunity to meet in New York. I think sometimes, in this day and age when so many people can connect and meet over, whether it's social media or whatever that is, it's so nice to still be able to meet in person. So it was delightful to be able to meet you.
I agree completely. Here we are. The science of longevity is booming. I think every day or maybe multiple times a day, I hear about a new startup everywhere around the world, but particularly in America. And there's a lot to talk about. But first, tell me the genesis of Sanctum Med and Wellness and what you hope to accomplish there. And then I know you have another startup you're brewing as well.
Yeah. So Sanctum Med and Wellness really came from, having practiced for 15 years in academic medicine. And really, it's the ability, like we were just talking about, to connect to our patients. And so there was a point in which the connection is somewhat lost because you either have to send them somewhere or you want them to continue some sort of lifestyle medicine or longevity, but you don't have the ability to do that in the practice model that we have in academic medicine today. And so coming out of that and using holistic practices, Eastern modalities, longevity for goals, I developed Sanctum Med and Wellness to be able to incorporate all of that. And so what we have is we have our traditional medicine setup where I see patients and practice evidence-based medicine. But in our center, we still have all of the other holistic practices, including yoga. We have 2 licensed therapists, life coaches. We have a traditional Chinese medicine doctor, 2 of them doing acupuncture. We have red light therapy and massage therapists and a registered dietitian.
That's fantastic. I think back in the day, everybody was talking about integrating medicine. And it sounds like you've done that fantastically.
Yeah.
What is your general idea of clients, what they do? I call them clients sometimes because I don't want them to be sick patients.
So I think, I kind of have like 2 pools of patients, I guess you could say, because I've done gynecology for so long and had a very, very strong surgical practice because I did a fellowship in minimally invasive gynecology. So I still have a lot of patients who see me and come for their, I guess you can say, their annual, their well woman visit, sometimes any bleeding issues from a gynecology standpoint. But I really have solidified myself in the perimenopause and menopause space and really giving birth to that and allowing women to feel heard and giving them as many options as possible and how to navigate through that. And so then I have a lot of patients coming to me for that because I speak a lot on menopause and perimenopause and what that experience is. So I'd say that's kind of like the buckets of patients that I see. But yeah, it makes it very nice for me to be able to still practice what I've done for time and time again. And then working in the menopause space is really navigating the newest innovation that they have in the field and being able for patients to really see the scope of what menopause has for it, whether it's from the metabolic perspective, whether it's from the hormone perspective, whether it's from the sexual health perspective, and then from the mind and mental wellness perspective. So we really are able for them to see it on all different levels.
No, I'd say you're a tremendous advocate for women, and you share what you know. And we both, I'm sure, grown well out of our very specific and discrete practice. I know you even write for consumer magazines. You love education. It just comes through in the way you're describing it. What is the issue out there? Why is there so much misinformation? I'm always disturbed by it because now on social media, everything glows. So like you think it's all good, but most of it is not. And I think in some ways it induces a lot of anxiety in the people I see and I hear or ask me questions.
Yeah, I have seen an increase in how we take in problems and or issues, how we think the world sees us. And I think that plays a lot into our psyche, which then I really believe, and I know for sure, mind-body connection and the things that happen for us mentally does manifest in our body. And so the way that I'm able to connect that for patients, a lot of patients will come in with issues that they're having at home and relationships at work. And then they'll have manifestation of that in symptoms. And so when they're able to see that, that actually allows us to give space and time for ourselves when we think of our emotions, when we think of trauma, emotional wounds, helping that, nurturing that while still paying attention to our physical symptoms and creating again this continuum between the two.
I don't think most outsiders, people who are not in medicine, realize the trust our patients put into us. A lot of times they share who they are. They really want to get insight and they don't know where to go. And so if your doctor can't be your trusted confidant, if the way she delivers or he delivers on the promise of what medicine and health and wellness can do, we're missing an opportunity, I think. And so it sounds like you feel similarly, because that's where I feel the real heart and soul of medicine still exists, that trust between our patients and us and really guiding them effectively.
Yeah, and being able to guide them to the other, I guess, providers that can also create safe spaces for them. Because I have really done a lot of research and time spent with people in other settings, whether it's mindfulness, whether it's Eastern modalities, whether it's from a therapist perspective, and learning their crafts, but not being an expert, so that I'm able to better serve my patients and know some of the signs that come up when they're suffering from something else outside of a medical condition. And so being able to make that connection and then send them off, that again is that trust of, I know what you're going through and I also know where to get you to get the help that you're going to need in order to have the better outcome.
And we know as doctors, it's hard to get our colleagues even on the phone. They're seeing 20 to 40 people a day. They don't have time to, all of this new electronic way of engaging is fabulous, but fax machines are a way of life, so you don't have to be interrupted. And unfortunately, it's not a reality anymore. What drew you to longevity and functional medicine?
I think that part of it definitely came from when you look, one, at the current healthcare system. I think the healthcare system,
so to speak,
right, has really failed us into, we're still a very diseased country. And when you think of chronic conditions, 7 out of 10 chronic conditions are actually avoidable. And so when you look at the aging process, and then also disease and how that increases, obviously you're going to have more disease and the likelihood of having disease as you age, but you also have the opportunity and the choices to offset that. And that's where longevity really came into the practice for me. Was for me personally, I was like, how do I want to show up later on in life? And with the training that I have as a medical doctor, and also seeing this scope of alternatives and Eastern modalities, what can I do in addition to that, which is what longevity medicine provided, because I wanted patients to be able to see themselves differently than just aging and what comes with aging, with the stigma of, now I'm just going to get sick. And I think that there's a very strong messaging when we think of the healthcare system, is that it's unavoidable. And so changing that perception of what people think of themselves and what they're actually able to accomplish is actually remarkable when you either understand it, when you believe it, when you get it. And so I think my job is to be that cheerleader for my patients and saying, I know you can do this. And I know that here are some really good features that can enhance that journey for you. So it's not for everyone. I think that you really have to have a true sense of, I really want this for myself in order for it to really work. But being able to offer it for me was the best part of it. Because if I don't offer it, then the people who do want to adhere to it or are interested in it would never have heard of it. And so I think that my job is really to be the messenger.
That's fantastic. I use the word guide, but I think too that there's a ton of knowledge out there. How do you know if it's good or bad? And so I always think And as you well articulated, it's turning that knowledge and all the disparate pieces into wisdom. And that's what you're able to do. What is really fascinating, but in your wonderful state of Texas, there was a 71-year-old who showed up on stage with the 21-year-olds competing for, I think it's either Miss America or Miss USA. And I heard this last night on the news and I saw her. She looked incredible. And more importantly, what she said when they asked her, the newscaster was on CBS, when they asked her, like, what did you think and how did it feel to show up 50 years older than most of the other women? She said, first of all, they were really supportive. And I was able to show them how you can look and feel if you make the right choices. She wasn't even on a bully pulpit. She was actually saying, this is what I chose to do. And this is how I'll do it. And here's what's missing. We're not proactive in medicine. We can't be. We're so busy taking care of chronically ill folks when they show up so sick after decades of it brewing under the surface. So I completely get where you're coming from. And I think it's amazing because I was blown away when I saw her and so proud of being a woman. Yeah, I believe it was Texas. I hope it was Texas. It might have been Arizona, but I think it was Texas.
But I think that's like fabulous that
yes,
be blown away by someone of that age. But I really do think, and this is where the mind-body connection comes into it, she had to believe it for herself.
Exactly. Right? She said it even, you know? Yeah. You're 1,000% right. I had to be convinced and I saw, why did I want to age like my mother? And I see that a lot, but then a lot of women say, well, I know I'm going to turn into my mother. And I have to tell them that your genes don't have to be your destiny. You can make choices if you have the bits and bytes of information under the surface. You may not know it, but you know at 40, you're not 20. And you keep thinking, well, you can't really take care of yourself. Maybe you're a busy career woman and rising in the ranks. Maybe it's kids, whatever it is, you think, well, if I just, but the answer is not in just being what you were at 25 because your body is evolving. So giving them that, it's a gift. It's a gift of life, actually, because you only have one body. So where are you going to live if your body deteriorates, right?
And that's the other thing is that we only have like one shot at this. And so in order for us to get that outcome, I also say it's very similar to what I would say financially. I would never tell you to wait until you retire to start saving. You start saving earlier in life so that it's ready for you, right? When you retire. Same thing with
your financial portfolio, right?
Your health is one of the most important things that you can have for yourself later on in life. And so if you want that return on investment, then you have to put in the work and the time now until it becomes your lifestyle and your habit. And then you'll be so, pleased with yourself when you want your body to come through for you and you want your health and wellness to come through for you, that it does because you gave it the time and effort. And so that's why I try to, focus the conversation on what do you want? And, putting it back to the person having the autonomy to say, this is what I want. And I'm like, well, then let's work on that. And, step by step, I think that it's an approach to people being open to seeing the results and then wanting more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In order to do that, there is an investment. But the good news is if you start it as young as possible and you can bring it even home to your family once you're aware of what are the issues, how do you sort out the good, the bad, the neutral? And why do you think there's still so much misinformation about perimenopause and menopause? I feel sad about it because I remember answering these questions to the mothers. I wasn't close to being menopausal at the time. I started way too young. And when I had these women, menopause was in the closet and they wanted to feel, they thought life was ending, and the transition was clear. It starts in the 30s, it heads into the 40s. And most of the time, by the time you're 50, 51, you're going to be menopausal. Your ovaries have stopped. You're not cycling for a year. But there's so much misinformation. How do we get that straight?
That is probably the $1 million question. I think we are on our way to a better future in menopause than I've seen in the past. When I was practicing or in residency rather in training, that's really when the kind of WHI came along and kind of kiboshed everything. And there was just a really distinct change in how we approached hormones. And not to say that hormones are the end all be all to the menopausal experience, but it is a good part of it. And so with that came, again, hiding and stigma and shame. And so then comes the disconnect between what we as providers can offer and then patients wanting to, again, address something that already was kind of a pain point for them. So there was a lot of kind of rolling around, not knowing what to do on both ends. And then we didn't really have any tools as providers. And the other thing that I would say is we kind of put menopause into this box of, one, it's horrible. And your life is just horrible after menopause. So I'm trying to change that narrative.
Life ends after menopause. You're menopausal, you don't talk about it. You're old, basically.
Yeah. The message, no one wants to go through it, right? So if no one wants to go through it, then we can't even really do good education in preparing for it because everyone's trying to avoid it. And so I think that now that we're kind of expanding the experience of education, knowledge, treatment modalities into the perimenopausal space, I'm very hopeful that, in the next generation to come, that one, they're going to have things on board before they get to menopause. There will be a change in the messaging behind it. And then we're going to have, as providers, more validity, more evidence towards how hormones actually are beneficial. And so this change is going to take some time, but I'm glad we're out of kind of this dark cloud of hormones are bad, menopause is horrible, and then having the stigma behind it. So that, I think, now that we've changed that narrative, it will probably take, for me, in my opinion, maybe another 10 years before we're actually just speaking about perimenopause and menopause, and it's no big deal. Kind of like what we in the breast cancer phase,
right.
Like, it started with, Susan B. Komen and making it something that people could discuss, not be ashamed about. And now who doesn't know about October and Breast Cancer Awareness Month when before it used to be so taboo to talk about breast and breast cancer?
Yeah. Plus, the more attention you bring to something. I remember that I found a photograph around the time I started Women's Health and when we talked about heart disease. And I remember inviting the chairman of cardiology. At the time, I was married to a cardiologist who ultimately became associate chairman there. And also all the other participants in sort of working up heart disease. Mm-hmm. And I remember giving them a lecture and putting up slides side by side, the 1900 and 1990s, one woman in the cardiology department. So attention wasn't given. The voice wasn't there. We didn't think of women. And the only article I could find about women in heart disease was at the American Heart Association, where they talked about your husband's heart and what you have to do to take care of it. And this is over 20 years ago, almost 30, and actually 30. And the Women's Health Initiative trial at the time, I remember thinking in 20 years. So I'm optimistic that you said 10. I don't know. Optimistic. It takes a very long time. Even I don't know if you saw recently, but my own field in endocrinology, there was a new statement of vitamin D not being necessary until you're 75 or maybe when you're pregnant. And that it's all, a lot of hoopla over everything. And I think the lack of, proactive understanding of our bodies evolving in women and in men is actually very hurtful. And there was a quote from the Wall Street Journal that I came across from Naomi Watts, where she talked about her struggles with perimenopause. So I agree getting it earlier and earlier and out there in the dialogue is that there was no information, no community, not even a conversation with my own mother, no blame to her. And that was so common. And then today when I hear these women, the same story, it just makes me sad. And it's been a long time.
And one thing that I would say that 100% of women are going to go through, right?
Yes, it's inevitable. But what doesn't have to happen is we don't have to deteriorate. We
can change that whole outcome. And really now we have the tools. I think we have more credence to want to look at all the solutions rather than just saying this is what it is and this is what you're going to suffer through.
And just suck it up, which a lot of people hear from their regular doctors. Sorry, it's tough. You're getting older. What do you expect? Aches and pains. But no, I remember thinking around the time I started Women's Health, because I was looking at why do we take care of our athletes and their pitching arm and their knees and why do we let people age and get, arthritis and crippled instead of proactively working with them to preserve their strength and energy? And that's where I started with the tools I used, as well as hormones, because it's hormones that trigger in the whole downward decline. And it turns out testosterone's a huge trigger. And yet, even in today's world, testosterone isn't approved formally by the FDA for women. I mean, I've been using it and prescribing it for how many decades?
Right.
We don't need testosterone. We don't have testosterone, and men don't have estrogen. Wrong. Right.
Right.
Anyway, yeah. That's your experience too?
Gosh, completely. I think that's my experience. And I think even today, even though I'm very comfortable prescribing testosterone and recommend it to a lot of my patients, they still are very, very hesitant. And I think even some of my colleagues who are not comfortable with testosterone are, they're like, I don't know if that's something that should be recommended. So we have a lot of work to do, but I'm very excited.
We do. I mean, even educating my colleagues when I first was segueing into New York, I had to educate my colleagues along with my patients because otherwise they'd hear a different story. And still today, and I would say to them, what do you think sustains our muscles? Do you know the data on cognition and memory? Do you know that the heart's a muscle, by the way? All these diseases that come out emanate from the fact that our sugar goes south. We can't put it anywhere if we don't have enough muscle. That's testosterone. And we women have a fraction of what men have. So physiologically, we want to be who we are. And I always felt that my transition came when I was saying to myself, aging is really leading to this downfall. And aging isn't bad. I was always against the term anti-aging because I was pro-aging. Otherwise, to me, it was like early death. But I knew that we had to maintain physiological function. And that brings up an interesting topic. And I don't know if you've read about this, but researcher who looks to taking a piece of the ovaries and then planting it in women as they age so that they never go through menopause, so that they could sustain. Could you imagine? I mean, I can think of all the pros and cons, but I love the idea.
I was literally, as you just said that, I was like, well, I am a minimally invasive gynecologist. I wonder if.
Exactly. That's what came to mind. I'll find that paper and send it to you.
Please. I'm going to be like, maybe I should start this therapy. I think it's exciting. And that's what I love to see in innovation in medicine is, and especially in the longevity space and the regenerative space, is these things that no one would ever, think of or dream of. And now putting the thought into your head and where can we go with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I still remember with the changes in GnRH analogs and fertility so that women in their 50s, I see billboards when I travel up north from New York to Vermont where women are there hiking saying, I beat my cancer. I had decided to put off having children. And at 58, I have a child. Now, it's not recommended for everyone. I personally would have loved to continue to have children whenever, but I'm happy with my 2 sons, and I sort of have a daughter who's special to me.
You sure you got another one?
I think about it. Let me tell you, but I've decided I have too many babies percolating in the business world. I don't know that I could handle it, now because it is a lot of work. But it's also fun. I feel regenerated, rejuvenated when I'm around, even training younger people. And I love that educational piece of it because I feel like their life is in front of them. They have so much, just like us, because we're reinventing where medicine and healthcare should really be about health, not about only medicine.
And the sustainability of health.
Yeah.
I think sustainability of it and how long you can get your body to do its best work for you.
Yeah. That's why seeing this woman, compete and proud of it. And I would be hard pressed to say that she was as old as she claimed chronologically, because I bet biologically she was half that age. And that's all our goal. I do that constantly looking at biological age. Our data is feeding some of the algorithms going forward. And there are some secrets that we all carry within us that if we knew, we could manage better. I think there's huge promise, for example, for plasmapheresis, young blood for old blood, although I personally like the notion that we give it to ourselves. We clean our system out in some fashion by plasmapheresis or hyperbaric oxygen. And those are all very forward thinking for 99% of doctors, I would say. Yeah. And I think the public is more ready to embrace it because they're frustrated by the lack of guidance and what they should be doing to keep their health for life. We are living a longer life, right?
We are. Yes. Our life expectancy has increased. But I want to know, like, what, with all the things that you were just mentioning about hyperbaric and plasmapheresis, what are some of your routines that you do?
Oh, that's a great question. And I'm going to turn around the question to you, but I'll answer first. So first of all, I have a shake every morning. I actually have it here. I don't start eating because I'm not a purposeful intermittent faster, but I do intermittently fast. It's always been my thing. I'm never hungry when I get up. And I discovered the reason for why there are people who are starving, and I believe, and people who are not hungry. If you wake up with a higher than normal sugar, you're not necessarily going to be hungry. But if you tend to reactive hypoglycemia, which in OBGYN, almost every woman who's pregnant has a brief glucose tolerance, a short glucose tolerance test. It is so common. I actually have come to think over the last half a dozen years from the studies and work I've done with continuous glucose monitoring that every single person is on a path to diabetes because it's a Darwinian survival. And I'm working towards that premise. It's probably going to be the focus of the book I'm going to be trying to write over the next few months. I'm addicted to data and wearables, so I will try everything. I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor because when I'm on your watch,
I have a Whoop. This is a Whoop.
You have the Whoop. So yeah, and I have the Aura, so sleep to me is paramount. I was bad for a number of years because I always want to accomplish more and more. And I was lucky. I'm a good sleeper and deep sleeper. So you get what I've learned is if you're good at deep sleep, which I am, you can sleep shorter periods of time and still feel like you can thrive. And I experimented with plasmapheresis over a 6-month period at the end of 2021 when I was creating the app. And the first 3 months of plasmapheresis, I did it